guys? Today is the last day of 2018, and it's only really fitting that I go over my top 10 albums of 2018. 2018 has been a year of kind of hit or miss music for me. So there's been a lot of great projects, a lot of great moments, but overall I kind of felt a bit underwhelmed. So while going through and creating my top 100 list, which I'm gonna post in the comments, um, I just kind of felt that there was just something missing. And it may just be my own, like the circles that I listen to or the websites that I follow or the bands that I follow, but I felt like overall there wasn't as many amazing projects as last year. There wasn't as much variety for me as far as genres go. I found I was focusing a lot more on hip hop this year than any other year, at least in recent memory, which is a good and bad thing because definitely hip hop is the majority of my list. But it would have been nice if I was able to find some indie albums, some punk albums, some metal albums that really stuck out to me. But overall, it just felt like hip hop was my main focus. So I felt like it was just an underwhelming year for me overall. So just getting right into it, at number 10, I have Saba with Care For Me. Saba is a Chicago-based artist that I've been following for the better part of uh, four, 4 or 5 years. I believe that I first heard of him through Chance the Rapper, uh, like their collaborative efforts. And he has just released some of his older albums weren't that great in comparison to Care For Me, or they didn't resonate with me as much. Like I remember when he launched 2016's Bucket List project, and I really enjoyed it. I liked the narrative of it overall, but it wasn't an album that stood out substantially for me. But Care For Me really felt like an in-depth album. Like it felt like there's a lot of different emotions on it, and there's certain tracks on there that have been in constant rotation for me throughout the year. Uh, Number four, Calligraphy. It's a great song, great hook, great songwriting. But most of all, track number nine, Prom/King. That was the first song I heard from the album, and I absolutely fell in love with it because the first part of the song, he kind of goes over a memory he has with his cousin, and you know, him being a certain type of way with women, and his cousin kind of promoting him to be, a bit more confident. And then on the second half of the song, he goes over how he's making all these accomplishments in his life, and his cousin is kind of stuck in his old ways, and it ultimately leads to his death, which was kind of the first time I heard it. I was like really brought into the sound. Like I was really focusing on the story. So overall, the album is very good. I like the first track, Busy/Sirens, with the Mind. I think the Mind singing on that song is amazing, and I think Saba's verses are fantastic. And if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check out the music video for that song. Very good. Now, number nine, people are probably going to be a bit surprised by this because I'm a bit surprised that it's so low on the list, but Kid See Goes with Kid See Goes. Kid Cudi and Kanye are two of my favorite, if not my favorite artists. And I remember back in May, or maybe it was April, when Kanye announced that he was going to be releasing uh, those select albums in June, and he had said that him and Kid Cudi were going to drop a collaborative album. And I, to be honest with you, did not believe that that was actually going to come out. I was super skeptical, but seeing that it did come out, listening to it for the first time was kind of a crazy experience. So when it came out, I was actually in Tennessee at Bonnaroo, and my phone had just completely stopped working. Like I think I had like 5% battery, and I went to I went to one of the charging stations to try and charge my phone because I listened to one song, and when I get to the charging station, my phone just would not charge at all. So I got to listen to one song and my phone just didn't work for the next 2 days. So the album got pushed back even more for me, which is fine because obviously I've listened to it quite a few times since then. But just the initial drop, I was like, man, I really feel like I'm missing out on this. But overall, the reason why it's not higher on the list is one, because there are albums that I did enjoy more, and two, I think that there's some moments on the album that I could have done without. Like, I really like the intro track with Pusha T. Like, when Kanye goes in with the scatting, it's just amazing. It hypes me up every single time. And Reborn, I think that is the kind of song that I love to hear from Kid Cudi, and I love Kanye's verses on there. And Cudi Montage, the last song, I think that's the kind of grunge influenced music that I was kind of hoping from Kid Cudi, especially on Speeding Bullet to Heaven, which obviously he didn't make a song that's as good as Cudi Montage on Speeding Bullet to Heaven, but I did enjoy quite a few songs on there. But as weird as it sounds, Free, Ghost Town Part 2, I really am not a big fan of that song. I think that their vocals just do not sound good. And Kids See Ghosts, I like the verses on there, but I think that Yasmin Bey, aka Mos Def, I just don't really like the hook. And I know that it's a fan favorite for a lot of people, but it's just, his voice just didn't do it for me. I was not a huge fan. But overall, I'm excited to hear them actually do another album if they decide to, which it's kind of been said that like Kanye said that he wants to do another one. So I'd love to hear that, and I think the production is top notch. Like, Kanye absolutely killed the production. It's just those certain select songs kind of held the album back a bit for me. Now at number 8, I have Mac Miller's Swimming. Obviously, Mac Miller's death affected me pretty substantially this year. I was pretty upset by it. I remember sitting on my couch playing Spider-Man for PS4 the day it came out, and when I play certain games, I just kind of keep my phone at the side and I don't look at it. And I remember just for whatever reason, I was kind of getting a bit bored of the game, and I just went to grab my phone. I pull up Instagram, and like 5 minutes ago, TMZ announced that he died. And I had to stop playing the game, and I just immediately came into my computer room and just turned on swimming. And to be completely transparent, it wasn't an album that I was in love with when it initially came out. So I was a huge fan of the first single, Self Care, but overall, the first time I listened to it, a few songs stuck out, but overall I felt like there was a bit too much singing on the album. And not that I hate Mac Miller's voice, but I felt like it was not the kind of album that I was expecting. I absolutely hated Divine Feminine. I thought that album was probably his worst release. And I was expecting him to kind of go back to a more rapping style. And then when he released Swimming, hearing him do kind of the same thing he was doing with Divine Feminine, I wasn't really feeling it. But the context of it after his death really made an impact on me. Like, I think that really changed my opinion on the album. And you can say that, people are just enjoying it because Mac Miller died and they want to pretend like they're fans when they're not. But listening to 2009 after his death, it's so sad. It makes me really sad to hear. But overall, the album, it has a lot of great moments. I always liked the first song, Come Back to Earth. I always liked Perfecto. I always liked Wings. But songs like Ladders, Don't Know, and So It Goes, began to stick out to me a lot more. And same with Small Worlds. I definitely became a fan of listening to the album all the way through and enjoying its highs and lows. And I think that it's the perfect final album for him. Artistically, he really changed things up, and he really found his sound, and I feel like he was just entering his prime. So it's definitely sad to see him go. At number 7, I have Black Atlas with Pain and Pleasure. Black Atlas kind of got on my radar because he's signed to XO, which is the Weeknd's label. And it was going to kind of be a passive thing for me to listen to him because I wasn't looking forward to the album. I had kind of known about who he was. I saw the video for his single "My Life." It came up on my YouTube feed, and I was just kind of underwhelmed by it. I wasn't completely in love with it. It actually took for me to be kind of in a. I went over to a friend's house, and they they were showing me their speakers, and they played this album, and it kind of sold me on it. Like, pretty much every song in this album I do enjoy. It's a bit generic as far as themes and things like that, but I feel like modern R&B, especially this brand of R&B, is gonna be like that. But I think the songwriting is top notch. Like Something Real, Fantasy, Pain and Pleasure, Shadows, and even My Life, all are great songs, and I think that this album slipped by a lot of people. So if you do like R&B music, I think Black Atlas, Pain and Pleasure is definitely something you should check out. And at number 6, I have Kanye West with Ye. I did a short review. It's a video I made private. I might unprivate that video at some point. But it was an album that, much like Kids See Ghosts, I did not expect to actually come out. I was absolutely in love with it. I still listen to it pretty much once or twice a week. It's something um, it's something that I wasn't expecting from Kanye. There are some things that I wish he could have like tightened up a bit, but overall I felt that the album still was enjoyable. The only song I can say I don't really enjoy is All Mine, and I think that's just because lyrically I feel kind of underwhelmed by it, and I think that some of his lines um, just were not good in that song. I hate the hook, but overall, I thought about Killing You, Yikes, Wouldn't Leave, No Mistakes, Ghost Town, and Violent Crimes are all great songs. Especially Ghost Town. Ghost Town might be my favorite song of the year. Like 070 Shake, amazing on that song. I absolutely love her vocals. No Mistakes, I love the sample on it. Wouldn't Leave, I love the message of it. And I thought about Killing You, perfect song for Kanye. I'm not a huge fan of the second half of the song, but the beginning, with the Francis Starlight influenced, produced um, effects, it's great. I think it's a perfect way to start the album. At number 5, I have Lupe Fiasco with Drogas Wave. Now, this was an album that I didn't think was coming out this year. He had kind of said that it was, but if you've been following Lupe for a while, like, you know that this album has been promised for quite a while. And Lupe is not the best with release dates at all. This is not a perfect album by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I don't expect someone to want to sit down and listen to, an hour and 40 minutes of Lupe Fiasco music unless you're a fan. Um, but if you like hip hop and you're okay with sitting down and listening to it, then it is 100% worth it. With 24 tracks, like, this album is insane. Like, there's still things that I'm kind of picking apart from it, but the lyricism is just amazing. Like, listening to Manila, Wave Files, God versus the Right Thing to Do, Sun God Sam and the California Drug Deals, Stack That Cheese, Cripple, King Nas, Mural Jr. All of those songs are amazing lyrically, and there's so much stuff to file through, like, and figure out. His lyricism on this project is amazing, absolutely amazing. And with his last project, Drogas Light, I was really hesitant about this. I'm not going to say it's my favorite Lupe album. My favorite Lupe album, I think, would be Tetsuo and Youth. But Drogas Wave definitely stands with the other three in his best projects. I think that it makes me sad to see how little the album sold, because the album basically went like triple cardboard. I think it sold like less than 10,000 in its first week. But it's mostly because Lupe was terrible at promoting it, and he's not on Atlantic anymore, so this is an independent album. But this album took probably so long to make, and it's sad that it didn't get the recognition that it deserved, because it really is an amazing album. At number 4, I have Denzel Curry with Taboo. So Denzel is an artist that I have been following since 2014 when he released Nostalgia 64. And this was the album that I've kind of always wanted him to make. This was the album that I thought that he was capable of, and I'm excited to hear what he's going to release in the future beyond this, because I feel like this was his first album to kind of step into the mainstream. But one thing I really enjoy about it is that it does have 3 different sides to it. It's light, gray, and then dark. So the first part of the album is this upbeat sounding, not necessarily positive, but definitely a lot more upbeat in comparison to the gray and the dark side. Now the gray side kind of has a bit of that upbeatness, just with a little bit more, a little bit darker. And then obviously on the dark side, it's him going absolutely insane with his flows and his aggression. So on each side of the album, there's songs that I enjoy. I'm a huge fan of Cash Maniac. I love Sumo. Sumo hypes me up every single time I hear it. On side 2, I really like Sirens with Jid and Billie Eilish. Like I think that their verses, Denzel's and Jid's, amazing. I feel like they both absolutely killed it. I'd love to hear them do more songs together. And even Clout Cobain, I think that that's an earworm. I know that it's fairly big on YouTube, but I think that it could be a lot bigger if it was on more people's radar. And finally, on the third side, with tracks like Perks and Black Metal Terrorist, his aggression is just so good. Like, I love listening to him because he just takes it to another level. And on Vengeance, that might be my favorite collaborative track of the year. Vengeance with Zillakami and JPEG Mafia. I've been kind of wanting Zillakami to collaborate with more artists, because I love his voice, and I hear a lot of Denzel Curry in his voice. And JPEG Mafia is just such a weird guy, and his flow is just so off the wall that the track just turned out amazing. And if there's any song on this album that you should check out, it's definitely Vengeance. Number 3, I have MGMT with Little Dark Age. This album probably would have made my number 1 pick if it wasn't for, obviously, my second and first picks. I love it. I feel like MGMT really went back to their roots, and they haven't really released anything that I've been in love with since, what year did, since 2010, wow. They haven't released an album that I've enjoyed in 8 years. Their last self-titled album did absolutely nothing for me. I hated it. But this album might actually be my second favorite, apart from their first one. There's so many great moments on it, and it's really cool to hear a band that's influenced by like new wave artists or bands like The Cure, and I think that they do it very well. Honestly, like the first 5 tracks of it, She Works Out Too Much, Little Dark Age, When You Die, Me and Michael, and TSLAMP all are fantastic. The album does trail off a bit towards the end, but sonically, it's still quite enjoyable. But When You Die is definitely my favorite track off the album, and the video for it is definitely up in my top 5 videos of the year for sure. And somehow, I don't know why, but I love Me and Michael. Like, I feel like that's just, you probably would never expect me to listen to something like that, but I absolutely love that song. It's just such an upbeat, goofy song. And Little Dark Age, that goes back to them being heavily influenced by The Cure. Like when I first heard that, I was like, man, if The Cure were making, they're still making music, but if they were making like modern, if they were a newer band in 2018. Number two, which it pains me to put this at number two and not number one, but number two is Pusha T's Daytona. This should honestly come as no surprise if I talk to you about music at all, but I love this album. I listen to it once or twice a week, front to back. He doesn't miss on a single track on here. I absolutely... Push's voice mixed with Kanye's production is perfect to me. I love it. I could listen to 10 more albums like this, even if thematically he's talking about the same things. But there's so many moments on this album that I enjoy. Pretty much from the very beginning, the first track, If You Know, You Know, when Kanye drops that beat, my head just was banging. Like, I loved it. I love the production on that song. I love Come Back Baby. I love Tony Williams on it. Santeria with 070 Shake once again on the hook, I believe singing Portuguese. Fantastic. What he's talking about is great too, as far as the death of his manager. The whole album is just amazing, and I think it's something that every hip-hop fan should listen to if you haven't already. I absolutely love the cover art. I know that people might find it disrespectful, but it really makes the album for me. And finally, my number one album of the year should come as no surprise to anyone. It's Travis Scott's Astroworld. I love this album. And Travis is one of my favorite artists. He's been one of my favorite artists since 2013. But this isn't just blind fanboyness. For the last 2 years, actually, I haven't really rated his albums very high. I have my list pulled up here. I put Huncho Jack Huncho, which is his collaborative album with Quavo. Put that at 25 in 2017. And then in 2016, I put Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight at number 14. But going back to 2015, I did put Rodeo tied for number one with Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. But this album, Astroworld, is the true sequel to Rodeo to me. It's an album that I really wanted him to make. I was getting a little bit worried with his quality of music. I felt that Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight, although it's a great album, it isn't the album that I wanted him to make. I like that his production is always just so weird, and the way that he uses people is fantastic. So it's unique, and it's like definitely pop influenced. So he's able to create really catchy, memorable beats. Well, not him personally, but he can orchestrate really catchy, popular beats. But at the same time, just throw in, Tame Impala or Bon Iver. I think that he's a really talented producer in the same way that Kanye or Dr. Dre is. And I think time will tell if he's able to create other masterpieces. And I was really, really hopeful for this album, and it definitely surpassed my expectations as far as as far as the amount of songs that I can constantly play, like there's only a handful of songs that I don't have on repeat, but pretty much Stargazing is fantastic, Carousel is fantastic, Sicko Mode's fantastic, R.I.P. Screw is fantastic, Stop Trying to Be God with James Blake and Stevie Wonder, absolutely amazing. No Bystanders, that song hypes me up every single time. I love how he utilizes Sheck West and how he utilizes Juice World. Skeletons. Well, I'm not entirely in love with his verses because I think that they're a bit too Kanye-esque. I love how he uses Pharrell and The Weeknd, and you can tell that Kevin Parker had a hand in the production of the song. I wish it was a bit longer as well, because at 2 minutes and 26 seconds, it kind of ends before it gets going. Astroworld with Thundercat and John Mayer producing and playing guitar and playing bass, just absolutely insane. And then track number 13, Can't Say, with Don Toliver. I had no idea who that was. When I listened to it the first time, the track list does not have the features listed. And I was like, man, who the hell is this? I love that guy's voice, which I didn't include it in my top 10, but if you got a chance, you got to listen to his project, Donnie Warmack. Amazing. I think that if he can get a good team of writers, then he'll definitely have a bright future ahead of him. But overall, as I said at the beginning of the video, I felt that I was a bit underwhelmed overall with the year, but there were definitely some projects that I loved, and I think the overall saving grace for me for this year was the albums that Kanye put out in June. All of them made my list. There's not a single album that I really disliked out of that. I just wish that there was more. I just wish that maybe I put my finger on the pulse to other genres a bit more, because I think that the focus on hip hop was a bit too strong. Felt like every single month this year, or every single week this year, there was a new album dropping. And it was just so hard to keep up with everything. Like, one of the main reasons why I waited to put out my year-end list, even though I've had it done for the better part of 2 or 3 weeks, is because 21 Savage was dropping a new album. And I wanted to see how that would fit in there. So, overall, I would say last year's releases were a bit better for me personally, as far as like overall quality and different genres. But there were definitely some albums that are probably going to be albums that I listen to for the next 10 years that came out this year. So thanks for watching, and tell me what you think about my top 10, maybe rate your top 10, and I'll put the other 90s, the other 90 albums out of my 100 in the comments below.